All right, Winded City Countdown, episode 14. We are only 86 from 100, as your cousin Joey texted and told me tonight, Ben. So,
All right.
special occasions for us, apparently, when we hit 100. We'll talk about that and the T-shirt idea another time. But I am Scott Sternal. Matt has no idea what we're talking about. Matt Urich in his parents' basement in Streeter. Ben Russo in his own basement in Roselle. Scott Sternal not in the basement, not in the living room. I'm at the Kalahari up in Wisconsin.
Live on remote.
Live on remote. You really yelled that one into the microphone there.
I did.
You were really excited. You're more
really
excited about me being on remote than you.
Well, the joke came to me so quickly that my brain couldn't process. I just had to scream it. Sorry.
I guess so. So, but yeah, I'm up here at the Kalahari. So if you hear some small children in the background, if you hear people having a conversation, it's because they're walking potentially from the Double Cut Steakhouse, which is right down to my left, or they're trying to get back to their hotel rooms, which are on the right. One of the two.
If there's ever a moment that somebody stops and watches you for a while, I beg and plead that you ask them to come on air.
Done. I think it.
Yeah, let's not do that. That's all right.
Come on, that could like transform this show. This is the jolt.
If it's like a famous person, by all means. But
what if I look at him? I'm like, he looks like a real straight shooter.
I'm okay with that.
Kind of like what's his name? Zach Galifianakis in Hangover.
Alan.
Yeah, Alan. Where he's like, he seemed like a real straight shooter. The guy that sold you drugs, Alan, looked like a straight shooter, huh? So, but yes, I've got that happening here. I got if you're watching this on YouTube, I got a nice elephant painting behind me. So, but you know what? This is commitment to the podcast right here. That's what this is. Commitment to the podcast. So, but let's not beat around the bush. Let's get right to it here. There's a small tournament that occurred over the last couple weeks, and it is winding down. And Saturday will be two of the final 3 games remaining. And I want to start out before we talk about this. This was the worst year I've ever had with picking the tournament. To the point that I participate in a pool where you pick one of every seed, and I won money this year. So you might be saying to yourself, Scott, that doesn't mean that you're bad at this. Well, it does when they guarantee your money back if you come in dead last. And I scored 11. 11 points. I mean, it's almost as though I tried to be terrible.
Yeah. Did you make the picks after the games were done?
Oh, I must have. I literally must have, because it is just downright embarrassing. And I think if we go back 2 weeks, you wouldn't think they were terrible picks. I mean, my number 1 seed that I chose was Kansas. I went Kansas for this one. So that's what I went with there. But my 2 seed was Michigan State. So that was bad. You know what's great, though, when you know you're in last place? Like, I'm going to take a look right now, and I know that my name is at the bottom of the list, so I can find it. Took Texas A&M as my 3, California as my 4, Baylor as my 5, Arizona as my 6, Iowa as my 7. All these teams were out day 1, except for Kansas and A&M. Colorado, Cincinnati, South Dakota State, Iona. I mean, just nothing. Even my additional pick, my 4, you get one of every seed plus an additional, and I took Purdue. So I could.
Why?
Why Purdue? You know what? I thought they played tough against Michigan State in the Big Ten final.
Which they did, but then Michigan State lost in the first round. So there you go.
Middle Tennessee State. So it's just shockingly bad, though. I mean, I've just never been that bad. So as far as the tournament goes, I pick somebody to win on one side to face a winner on the other side, and ultimately we will crown a champion with the team that scores more points. Those are my thoughts on the Final Four, because that should be all I'm qualified to do based on this year. Ben, take it away.
Well, I picked 2 of the 4 Final Four teams. Thanks
Oh,
very much.
hold on. So that was one bracket. In my actual fill out of a bracket, I did pick Oklahoma and North Carolina.
Yeah,
That's
but
my
that
team.
was like your unofficial bracket.
No, that was an actual bracket. The one that I just told you about wasn't an actual bracket. It was just me.
It was just the teams, yeah.
Right. So in my actual bracket, I still hit 2 out of 4. Like I'm still going to finish 10th in an actual bracket.
I'm in first. I'm actually in first in one, and I don't have my I'm capped out on points. Because obviously I have 2 of the 4 Final Four, but my national championship was Kansas versus Michigan State, so with Michigan State winning, so nailed that one. Yeah, there's one guy has 3 of the 4, so like I'm gonna lose, but right now at least in the standings I'm in first. But this was this is the earliest I've ever lost my champion. I think after the first 2 days, I think I was down to like 5 of 8 Elite Eights left. Like I had already lost 3 Elite Eights. It was bad. It was really bad, really ugly for me.
And I think you would agree. Like you and I generally agree that the recipe for success is you want to get out of the first weekend with 14 of 16 Sweet 16s, and you want to get to the Elite Eight with 6 out of 8 of them. And if you get to the Final Four with 3 out of 4, you're in it, right? Like that's really the recipe.
Well, and you lose your champion on day one. There's really no recovering. I mean, there really isn't. So,
there are people walking by smiling at me, by the way, as I do this. Just so you all know.
Nice.
Just as we to move on to the Final Four, I think Syracuse is. I don't know that any of us would have thought that. I mean, that was a team that I think most were arguing shouldn't even have been in the tournament, and here they are in the Final Four. Now, granted, kind of an easy path. They were, what was it? What are they, an 11 or a 10? I think they're
10.
10. So they beat a 7, and then I think they played Gonzaga.
No, they didn't play them till Sweet 16.
Sweet 16,
they played Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, so they've beaten
a
7, a 15, a 10, and then I don't even remember who they beat the other day.
A 1, Virginia.
Yeah, they beat Virginia.
Which, that was dog-ass bad right there.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Virginia just with their smirky, like, oh, look at us, and then they blow it, and there you go. But
they Virginia'd all over themselves.
Yep. I think right now, obviously, the easy picks would be Villanova versus UNC. Moving on. I know I'll be cheering for Oklahoma. I'm really hoping Buddy gets it done, and the Bulls continue to lose and somehow are able to draft him. That's my ideal situation. But I think I'll be pulling for Oklahoma. But I think my money, if I had to bet, so if I had $100 forced to bet, I think I'd put it on Nova right now. I read a statistics about the Ken Pom rankings.
Yeah.
And the last team outside of the top 20 to win a national championship was the NC State team in 1983. Currently, the only team inside the top 20 in Ken Pom is Villanova, and they're actually at 7. So statistically, the numbers are in their favor. I think that Jay Wright defense can swarm anybody. Hopefully they don't blow it, but that's probably where I'd put my money right now.
I'm trying to figure out that stat because I'm looking at the Ken Pom right now. Villanova's 1, Carolina's 3, Oklahoma's 5, Syracuse is 22. So maybe it's that Syracuse won't win it because they're outside the top 20. But Villanova,
I'm just telling you what he said.
Yeah. I'm sure. I'm just telling you. I'm looking at the Ken Pom right now, and Villanova's number 1. And for me, I liked Villanova going in, but it was one of those. But it's Villanova, and they always find a way to Villanova all over themselves. Like Virginia always finds a way to Virginia all over themselves. Matt, what are your thoughts on the Final Four?
Well, I'm a terrible person because I only watched one game of the Elite Eight.
Okay, moving on then.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm with Ben. I like Oklahoma. I like Buddy Hield, but I don't think they have a chance to beat Nova. I think Carolina's showed that they're a damn good team. If they're hitting threes, they're a good team. So, I mean, like I said, I'm not qualified enough I filled out one bracket that was for fun this year. Michigan State was my winner. We saw how that went. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Final Four.
It was just such an odd year, and it's been an odd year overall. And, yeah, I mean, I think it just all goes back to the the committee did a bad job of seeding. Villanova felt like a 1 seed the whole way. And yeah, they lost to Seton Hall in their final, but I don't know, it never to me felt like they shouldn't have been a 1. Oregon being a 1 seemed ridiculous. Michigan State being a 2 seemed ridiculous. Granted, they lost to Middle Tennessee State, but it still seemed ridiculous at the time that they were a 2. Wichita State, which still in the Ken Palm today is
I found that stat, by the way.
Well, what was the stat?
All right, so I'll just read the paragraph. It says, J. Scott will travel to Houston as the only Final Four team that's ranked among the top 10. Okay, it's in adjusted defensive efficiency by KenPom.com, 7th. It's important to note that only one team slotted outside the top 20 in the final rankings for adjusted defensive efficiency on KenPom.com has won a national title. North Carolina ranked 21st. Oh, I'm sorry. It was North Carolina ranked 21st in 2009, and just says basically defense matters.
Okay.
So it's the adjusted defensive efficiency. That's what it was.
So if you're looking at adjusted defensive efficiency, Syracuse is 16th and North Carolina is 21. So maybe that's a game. Maybe that's a better game than we think it's going to be. And then, you mentioned that, Ben, and there's Michigan State, 53rd in defense. There's Kentucky, 54th in defense. But then on the flip side of that, there's Wichita State, number 1. I don't know. This tournament's crazy. The Wichita thing, I think Wichita got screwed for the second time in 3 years.
Yeah, I agree.
As a 1 seed, they get Kentucky as an 8. I mean, that's outrageous. Yeah. And then they shouldn't have been playing Miami as an 11 seed in the second round. That's ridiculous. They get a bad second round matchup because the committee just doesn't value the small guy, and it's blatant bias, especially when you look at how many small schools got left out and the big schools got put in at the end, and you're going, this is stupid. So, Final Four, there you go. The committee sucks. If anybody has an argument against football having anything, that would be it right there. So, that's it. All right, let's move on because we've got 2 more topics and 18 more minutes. Benjamin, we're gonna save you for our lead on our last topic until later, because my dear Lord, I can't wait. I've been waiting for. We haven't talked face to face in a little bit here. I've been waiting to hear Ben's comments on the Bulls. So we'll save that for last. So Matt, we'll start with you. The Hawks. You're a new Hawks fan, so for you, the Hawks making the playoffs is just what they do.
Old hat, yeah.
The old hat for you. How does it feel knowing that they've backed it in again?
It's strange because they're coming off of 2 straight wins against 2 pretty bad teams in Calgary and Vancouver, and they lost 6 of their last 7 before that. So it's so weird because we've talked about this before, the 3 of us, specifically in the last few weeks, that this is what this team seemingly does. They have this down moment in late February, throughout March and stuff leading into the playoffs. They have how many games left? Less than 10 probably, or somewhere around there right now. So
I think 7 or 8 left.
Yeah,
6 left.
Oh, okay.
Down to 6. Okay.
Yep.
And it's weird, but it doesn't. It feels like this has been the storyline, like year after year. Like, all right, the Hawks are sort of backing in on this. What are they going to do? Is their goaltending going to stand up? And that's obviously the big question now, because with Corey Crawford and what has now been described as, or they've said there's a chance he could be out maybe in the first round of the playoffs. Scott Darling, to me, I think is fine as a backup, but nothing more than that in my mind. So, I mean, you saw what he did in the playoffs last year, and he did some nice things, but all 3 of us, we all completely agree that Corey Crawford is what makes this team go, specifically in the playoffs. So if he's not healthy, it's going to be a scary couple weeks if they could even get that far without him.
So last year, one of my favorite Hawks websites, and I've mentioned it to you guys before, the Committed Indian. If you've never checked them out, check them out. Sam Fells, Fifth Feather, McClure, they're all awesome over there at the Indian. Pick up their program before the game. If you ever go to the United Center, it's a good read. He last year around this time, the Hawks got lit up by Columbus at home, and he wrote after that game, the blog post was, "This team isn't winning the Stanley Cup," and it was just all the reasons why this team wasn't going to win the Stanley Cup. I remember reading that article, just really angry. I've been reading Fells since 2009, and I was just really, really angry at him for writing that article. Like, how dare you? 2 cups, blah blah blah, the whole thing. And the Hawks obviously proved that article way wrong, and it was awesome, and there was a parade and 3 cups now, and yeah. If he wrote that article this year, I would probably sit there and go, yeah, this is not happening. It seems hard to believe that this team, as presently constructed, with Quinville not playing Ehrhoff, his reliance on TVR, who can't skate, who Andrew Ladd does not look like the player from Winnipeg, which big surprise when you're not skating with when you're brought in to be a guy and he's just not being that guy because it's not the guy he is. Did I really just say all that? I guess it just just what I'm saying though. It's there's not a lot of reason to hope here, and I think the thing that's really hurting more than anything, and nobody, Eddie Olczyk doesn't want to talk about it in the broadcast. The beat writers don't necessarily want to talk about Tuba Left unless you're talking about Lazarus. Is that Marian Hossa is bad? Marian Hossa is bad at hockey right now. Do you disagree with that, Ben? Marian Hossa is, maybe not bad,
No.
but he's not good at hockey.
But bad by his old standards.
Yes.
He's not what he was, and I think at this point, I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt to say, all right, we got to the playoffs. Like, let's just expect them to turn it up a notch. Can they? I have no idea. If I was a betting man, I'd probably say no, just the way they've been playing. But I think they've earned that. At this point, you wanted to go into the playoffs healthy. I don't know what's going on with Corey Crawford. That's the one bad part about the NHL is they have, like, you can basically just make up an injury and it's lower body, upper body, whatever it is. So if he's going to be 100%, yeah, I still give him a chance, obviously. But if he's not 100%, I don't know how far they're going to be able to go. They probably don't get out of the first round if they're going with Scott Darling in net because for the defensive deficiencies that they have, Crawford makes up for a lot of those, and that's not something Scott Darling can do.
That Dallas Stars team, when they're humming, it's going to be yaya time for Scott Darling. Yeah. Those shots are going to... They gave up... I thought I read last night. I didn't get a chance to watch the game, and I'm going to look it up right now. 15 shots in the third period to Vancouver. 15 freaking shots to the Vancouver Canucks in the third period last night. That's awful. There's nobody on that team. They have one line. The rest of that line is just god awful bad.
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know.
I still think they can turn it on come playoff time. Obviously the matchup, it's looking like it's probably going to be St. Louis or Dallas. Whoever finishes first will, Hawks will get whoever finishes second. So,
who do you want, Ben? Who do you want to see in the first round if you're the Hawks?
Not Dallas.
Yeah.
Why? Because I think they have the speed to beat the Hawks. Where I'm not saying St. Louis doesn't. St. Louis is known for their choke jobs. I think the Hawks can beat either of those teams because I don't think their goalie situation is very good. I think it's more of a mental game against Dallas more than anything. Where they've spanked us now all season long. They've just owned us, and then you have Sharp and Oduya there who can kind of feed into and let them know like what the Hawks want to do. I think again it's a different game come playoff time, but I think the confidence would be there against St. Louis more than it would be Dallas.
So the one thing that the three of us, whenever the Hawks are in the playoffs, we text all the time, and the one thing that I kept telling you guys during the Duck series last year, and I just kept going to it because I went to, the Indian writes about it, and it's that the only times the Hawks have been eliminated from the playoffs in the last 7 years now has been when a goalie's had a save percentage that's like north of .94. And so Brian Elliott, I don't know if you've noticed, is just playing out of his freaking mind at the moment. So I don't know that I want to play St. Louis. I think I would actually take my chances with Dallas and their piss poor goaltending and say, listen, that's fine. We can try to snipe it out with you over 7 games, Dallas. First to 5 wins every one and call it a day. Maybe the Hawks can't win that series, but I'll take the series where it's mediocre goalie versus the Hawks, because whenever the goalie's mediocre, the Hawks have shown that they can handle it. Matt,
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, though, if you're not going to get anything, like they're going to end up rolling 4 defensemen again, and then having guys, give you 8 to 10 minutes.
Are you rolling 4 defensemen though?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to.
I think you have to, right? I mean, who of that bottom pairing has shown anything?
I don't disagree, but who's your fourth? Who's your fourth?
Probably
defenseman? TVR. He skated 28 minutes the other night. Somehow,
maybe getting ready for 30 minutes a game for the playoffs.
Oh my God, that's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying.
What else are they going to do?
I don't know. But we'll is next week our playoff preview? I think next week we're doing playoffs, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe.
Could be.
It might be playoffs, or we might be 2 weeks off. I'm not sure when the Hawks' last game is, but we'll talk more about this as we go. But I will say I haven't felt this not confident in a Hawks playoff team since the year after the first Cup, when they snuck into the playoffs because Minnesota beat Dallas, funnily enough. And no, we're 2 weeks away from the playoff preview. Hawks season ends on April 9th, so we'll wait to do the playoff pod for 2 more weeks. But you look at you look at this. This is the least confident I've been since after that first Cup, because they snuck in and you went, whatever. This is all gravy at this point because we won that first Cup. So we'll see what happens. I hope they prove me wrong at this point. I hope we celebrate a 4th in 8 years. I hope there's another parade and proclamations of Patrick Kane not doing bad things to people again.
Ugh.
I did it. I went there. I know we said 100-foot pole, but I flirted with the line for the first time. But we'll go from there. So, all right. Before we let Ben hit the dumpster fire, that is the Bulls. We didn't touch on this pre-show, but really big soccer game tomorrow night. I don't know if you guys are aware. Out of nowhere, it's a huge soccer game.
Yep.
USA at home against Guatemala. Is it Guatemala?
Yes.
If they lose this game, it's potentially the Copa American that we're going to this summer is the last big game for the U.S. until the Gold Cup in 2017, which doesn't really count. I mean, they could be. Tomorrow is a really big day for U.S. soccer. They might get shut out of the Olympics, and they could get shut out of the World Cup for 2018. We're talking about a potential what is it? It's 2016. So the next World Cup's 2022, next Olympics 2020. You're talking at least 4 years before real meaningful competition soccer again for the U.S. That would be absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
Not to mention you're not even in the Hex this summer, or for the next year and a half.
Yeah, and the problem is, for me, as I'm like a newbie, I guess, in terms of soccer, is I don't understand Jurgen Klinsmann's take on things. A lot of people. His desire to turn American soccer into European soccer is not working the way he thinks it's going to work, and the U.S. has a lack of talent all over the board because kids in the U.S. don't play soccer at the rate. Your top athletes aren't playing soccer. That's just, it is what it is. I mean, if you could field a soccer team with LeBron James and Kevin Durant and Adrian Peterson, you probably have a damn good soccer team, but it's not the way it works, and Klinsmann doesn't understand that. He thinks people are just going to come out of the woodwork and become amazing soccer players. I've never liked him. I mean, the only silver lining if they lose is he should be gone.
Oh, he is gone. He's definitely gone. If they lose to Guatemala tomorrow, it's over. Ben, any thoughts on soccer before we give you the dumpster fire?
No.
No.
No,
All
I'm
right.
good.
It's a big game tomorrow, so be sure to tune in, check it out. USA, Guatemala, and then the under-23s, USA versus the Colombian under-23s. All right, Ben, the floor is yours. The Bulls literally, as we recorded this, just lost 102-100 to Atlanta. So I believe it's a 4-game losing streak now.
Yes, and they are no longer the 9 seed. They're now the 10 seed in the East. Wow, they're tied with the Washington Wizards at 36 and 37, and the Wizards have the tiebreaker over the Bulls. So they are now 2.5 out of the 8 seed. And again, Pistons have the tiebreaker, so they need to beat the Pistons outright. So it's essentially a 3-game, 3 games out. It's not good. They stink. I want to watch them keep losing because if they sneak into the playoffs, I know that, personally, I don't know that there's going to be any change anyway. But if they were to sneak into the playoffs, all they would just say is, "Oh, well, look at all the injuries we had, and we still made the playoffs." Like Tibbs didn't do this for the last however many years. But it's just an embarrassment, and I just want them to keep losing to the point where the Bulls may not have a choice but to get rid of somebody, make somebody pay. I read a nice article. I don't know where it was at, but somebody made the case to fire Gar and move Hoiberg upstairs back into the front office. So you're essentially still paying him to work, but he's not coaching anymore because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to change this roster in one off season. These players clearly don't want to play for Hoiberg. Your best player, Jimmy Butler, who, I'm sorry, I don't think he's that good. People want to pretend like he's a top 15 player.
He's not a superstar. He's not a superstar. And there's nothing wrong with Jimmy Butler not being a superstar. That's not a knock on Jimmy Butler. That's not a knock on the organization for not playing him up. There's one potential superstar on this team, and it's Derrick Rose, and he's probably past his prime, and he's probably done because of the knee injuries.
He's not healthy.
But he is the only one that is a legitimate superstar. We've seen it. He was the MVP. He beat LeBron for the MVP. Whether you agree with how that vote went down or not, he did enough to put himself into a solid conversation there. Jimmy Butler is not winning any MVPs.
No. Jimmy Butler is a very good basketball player, and there's nothing wrong with saying that that's as good as it gets for him.
Jimmy Butler is a consistent all-star.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm with you, Scott. I think people feel afraid to admit that he's not a superstar, and I don't understand that. The Bulls shouldn't feel bad for giving him the money they gave him because he's worth that money, in my opinion. I think he's worth that money, but I also don't think he's a superstar, and that's okay. And people get all upset about that for whatever reason, but to me, Jimmy's not the guy you build around.
The Bulls are worse in every category under Hoiberg, and that includes offense.
Yep.
They're a worse team, and I don't want to just sit here and be like, oh, it's all Hoiberg's fault, but he definitely holds a lot of blame on this. This was a flawed roster, and they put a lot of pressure on him to succeed, and they're not a good team. And
Thibs won 55 games with a flawed roster year after year. Thibs won 62 games with this Bulls team, and that was a flawed roster. Now, granted, he had Derrick Rose when Derrick Rose was peak Derrick, but there was still no bit. They started Keith Bogans.
Oh man!
And they won 62 games with Keith Bogans as their shooting guard.
That's terrible.
Give me a break. You're going to tell me that Hoiberg, trust the process, Hoiberg, blah. No. Thibs won with Keith Bogans getting 20 minutes a game. Give me a break.
They really need to just go into the offseason and trade anything and everything. There really can't be any player, and I'm talking even Jimmy Butler. If some team wants to overpay for Jimmy Butler, you move him.
Yeah.
At this point, you have to just feel like it's a tie. Like if you tie in a trade, you need to make that move. If you can
Go
if
ahead.
you're dead set on keeping Hoiberg, which I don't think they have a choice but to keep him. I mean, he's got 4 years and $20 million left on his
Oh,
contract.
and Reinsdorf,
Yeah, he's
you
not
could
going to
say
pay two coaches.
I don't want to harp on Reinsdorf because Reinsdorf, he's got 7 titles in his tenure, and he runs an organization which appears to be the right way more often than not. But I mean, he's just there are things you could point to that say he's not exactly. I wouldn't call him cheap, but I call him frugal.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't want to pay two coaches to not coach and then pay a third coach, obviously, to coach. So, it is. I certainly understand it, but at this point, then you need to retool the roster, and that's going to come with trading. And here's where it gets sticky. I don't want Garpax to be the one rebuilding this roster because I think they've already shown that they can't build a champion.
How long has Pax been the GM? Since 05? 04?
Yeah, I'm thinking.
I mean, so
like
we're at
04.
12 years. 12 years, no titles, no NBA Finals appearances, 1 Eastern Conference Final. I mean, hell,
where they got ran out of the gym.
You know what? You go back through the NBA over the last 16 years. I mean, look at the teams that have 1 Eastern Conference Finals appearance. The Philadelphia 76ers, they even have an NBA Finals appearance. The Milwaukee Bucks, the Cleveland Cavaliers have multiple. The Miami Heat. I mean, you just go. The Indiana Pacers have been to the Eastern Conference Final. I mean, I'm just going to go through the Eastern Conference here. I think every team that you would want to try to assess, that you would be trying to be, if you look at it, they've made the Raptors. Didn't the Raptors make an Eastern Conference Finals this decade or in the last 16 years? One of the years with Vince.
I don't know. Yeah, so
the Atlanta Hawks, the Boston Celtics. The only teams that have not made an Eastern Conference Finals since 2000 would be the Charlotte Hornets, the Washington Wizards for sure, the New York Knicks, the Nets when they were in the New Jersey made it in the last 16, and that's it. So it's not like the Bulls are sitting here like, well, we have this one conference final appearance and we should be proud of it. No, you shouldn't. Everybody else has done it. Everybody else has done it.
And you got steamrolled after winning 1 game. So
yeah.
It's not something you should hang your hat on for your accomplishment of going to the Eastern Conference Final and getting beaten by a much better team.
Agreed. So, Ben, are you unhappy with anything less than Paxson and Gar Forman being gone?
No, but I mean, I think Paxson's protected. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he gets
maybe he gets shifted. Is that even? I mean, does he get shifted out of kind of like Crane Kenny did with the Cubs? Like you bring in like a basketball god, and I don't know who that is at this point. I'm not as well versed.
I'll be truthful. I don't think anything's happening. I really don't because they.
I agree, but
they stuck themselves with Hoiberg's contract. Like you're not gonna get rid of Gar. Like it's hard to get rid of Gar and then retain Hoiberg because you're putting a GM in a spot where essentially you're telling him, hey, you're the GM, but by the way, you have to keep your head coach for at least 3 years or whatever until we can fire him. And then it's like this is Gar's handpicked guy. These are golfing buddies. I can't imagine Hoiberg's going to be super comfortable if they replace him. But yeah, I mean, my honest opinion, I think they both need to go. Paxson's had his time. Gar clearly has just made bad decisions. The only way they're going to get better is to draft, which they're picking in the middle of the draft. Again, they're going to be just good enough to not get the top tier players. So they're going to get, okay players like Mortage, Gibsons, Jimmy Butlers. Again, not guys who are superstars, but are good, are decent players. And they've already shown they can't recruit the big name talent. And I understand it's hard. There's only a handful of guys, but how many bites at the apple do they need to get before somebody else gets a chance? Like, sure, it's hard to recruit good guys, but Gar and Paxson have shown they can't. So it's time to give somebody else a chance.
Yeah,
I think that sums it up well. And I think more than anything, you're shooting for 2 years. Get your cap cleared as much as you can because there's a lot of free agents in 2 years. And I think you're right, Ben. It's hard to get those free agents, but you can't. If you don't have the cap space, you can't even attempt. Right, you can't even make a play towards it. But unfortunately, I just the Bulls, I think, got their break this decade. They
Getting
won a
Derrick
lottery.
Rose.
They won a lottery they weren't supposed to, and they couldn't turn that into an NBA title. And for me, that is, I think that and I don't want to have observation bias or whatever you want to call it, but it just seems far fetched to think that the Bulls are going to catch a second break like that in a decade. So, all right, well, that's the week. It's going to be interesting going ahead with all this. The Bulls chugging towards not the playoffs, the Hawks backing into the playoffs, the USA hopefully not ruining soccer for the next 6 years in this country, and the NCAA Final Four, which should be an interesting 2 days going into next week. So this week ahead for Winded City, any articles going up? Do we have anything on the docket? Ben, Matt, any?
I'm currently writing something about the Bulls that I've been writing for like a week now, and I just haven't been able to put it all together. So hopefully by the end of the week I'll have that done.
And Matt, you got anything coming up?
I'll probably have something by the end of the week. Not quite sure what, but
okay. Yeah, it's been a crazy month for the guys here at Winded City between family stuff and friend stuff and work stuff and travels and all that stuff. So we know the writing's been down. We'll get that going again. We know the podcast. We didn't have a weekly last week, but we're going to try to keep that going. But this week you have a weekly, and you just listened to it, and hopefully you thought it was awesome. If
you're like, yeah, that was good, I'll take that.
That was decent, right? But if you weren't interested in the weekly, we do have our MLB preview show that's going to go up on Wednesday, so be sure to check that out. And for Scott Sternal, I'm Scott Sternal. I'll get this right one of these days. For Ben Russo and Matt Urich, I'm Scott Sternal. Thank you for listening. Only 86 away from the special treat that Joe has promised us, gentlemen. Thanks for listening.